Hera Books presents Murder at the House on the Hill by Victoria Walters, read by Camilla Rockley. Chapter 1. Sleet danced past the window of the Dedley Endings Bookshop, but Nancy Hunter paid it no attention. She was far too engrossed in her book. Dedley End, nestled in the Cotswolds, was filled with tourists in the summer, seeking out cobbled streets and hikes with stunning views, but in December it was just the locals who spent time in the village. The days were drawing ever closer to Christmas, and Nancy knew that there would be a last-minute rush from their customers to buy gifts. But today it had been too cold for many of them to venture into the small high street, so it had been a quiet morning in the shop. After doing all the admin and tidying that was needed, she had retreated behind the counter and pulled out the book she was in the middle of, thinking, as she often did, that she really did have the best job in the world. "Fancy a cup of tea, love? It's so chilly," her grandmother Jane called from the back office. Nancy called back that she would love one. Her grandmother was meant to be retired, but she couldn't resist daily walks to the shop from their nearby cottage, needing her fix of local gossip, although so far today there had been none to enjoy. Nancy closed her book when she reached the end of the chapter. She had read it before. It was one of her favourites, passed down to her by her father, a murder mystery by best-selling author Thomas Green. She smiled over at their beagle, Charlie, who was fast asleep on the window seat. He always accompanied her in the shop, and was beloved by the village. Nancy continued a sweep of the small, cosy shop with her eyes, and let out a wistful sigh. At this time of year, she missed her father the most. They would need to decorate the shop for Christmas soon, and that had always been his favourite thing to do. "Here we go," Jane said, coming out with 2 large, steaming hot mugs, taking her usual seat by the till. Although now in her late 60s, with grey hair and wrinkles around her green eyes, she was still surprisingly sprightly. Nancy's father had passed on his bookshop to Jane after his untimely death, and she had spent 16 years at the helm before letting Nancy take over the day-to-day management of it earlier this year. But she hated being stuck at home, so fully immersed herself in local activities and committees. "What are you thinking about?" "That we need to put up the tree, and how much Dad enjoyed wrapping books to put under it," Nancy replied, pushing back a stray hair from her light brown bob as she looked over at the corner where the tree stood every year. Her grandmother smiled. "He really did. It's always hard at this time of the year without him, isn't it?" she said wistfully. Nancy nodded, "Because it's such a family time." Her face clouded over as she thought about how her gran was her only family. Not only had she lost her father when she was 10, but her mother had long since left the village, and neither of them had any idea where she was. "Let's decorate on Sunday," she added, trying to brighten the conversation up. "Make it really special." Nancy was 26, and had worked in the bookshop since she had left university 5 years ago, and was excited to be running it now. She had lots of ideas for the place, but they would need to wait until after the Christmas rush. "He would love that. And we can move all the Christmas editions to the window. They always sell well, don't they?" Nancy nodded in agreement, looking at the bookshelves. When Nancy's father had decided to open a bookshop in the village he had lived in all his life, there had really only been one choice of genre for him. If you lived in Dedley End, you had to embrace the murder puns or lose your sense of humour completely. The Dedley Endings Bookshop, consequently, only sold crime, mystery, and thriller books, and people came from far and wide for the novelty, especially as so many detective stories were set in the Cotswolds. The business had thrived for 20 years, and Nancy was determined that it would continue to do so for a very long time indeed. The door opened then, making the bell on top of it jingle merrily. Charlie opened his eyes instantly and let out a bark in greeting. He didn't get up, though, It was too cold for the dog to move from his warm, sleeping spot. "Morning, folks," Paul, the postman, said with a nod. "Here's your post." He placed 2 envelopes on the counter and then actually winked. "Causing a stir in the village this morning, they are," he said, giving them a tap. "What are they?" Jane asked, standing and moving to Nancy's side to see. "I'll let you see for yourselves, but I will say this. I'll see you there." And with that cryptic comment, he left the shop, pushing his postcart off down the high street, whistling on his way as usual. Jane and Nancy looked at one another. "Well, what was that all about?" "Only one way to find out," Nancy said, picking up the envelope addressed to her. Her grandmother did the same for hers. Nancy opened up the envelope and pulled out the thick cream card within. It was the highest quality stationery, an invitation written in gold calligraphy. "Oh my," she said with a gasp as she read it. "Knock me down with a feather," Jane muttered as she too read her invite. "I can't believe it." Nancy stared at the words just as stunned. Nancy Hunter and guest. Please join us for an engagement celebration to honour Maria Roth and Charles Spencer at Roth Lodge on Friday, the 8th of December from 7:30 p.m. to 9 p.m. Cocktails and canapés will be served. Dress code, black tie. Please RSVP to Jessica Roth. "But the Roths never invite anyone in the village to their house," Nancy said when she had read it, looking up at her gran wide-eyed. She used the word house, but Roth Lodge really was a mansion. Although it stood just outside the village, perched on a hill, the Roth family never ventured into the high street and kept the large gates firmly closed to anyone from Dedley End. "Not for 30 years, Jane agreed, shaking her head. "I never thought I'd see the day again, to be honest." "I wonder why they've invited us to this," Nancy said. "I don't think I've ever even spoken to Maria Roth." "Perhaps she persuaded her parents and grandfather to let her invite locals. I mean, it is her party. Well, whatever the reason behind it, we have been invited. The question is, what do we RSVP?" Before Nancy could answer, the bookshop doorbell jingled again, and she reluctantly tore her eyes away from the invitation to see who it was. Chapter 2. "It's quiet in here," a cheerful male voice called out as the door swung open to reveal Jonathan Murphy, Nancy's friend since childhood, giving them a cheerful wave. This time Charlie did get up. He loved Jonathan and rushed over to greet him, his tail wagging. Jonathan bent down to rub his ears. "I brought lunch." "Brilliant, I'm starving," Nancy replied, turning back to the invitation. "You always are," he replied, coming over and putting a paper bag from the local cafe, the Tea House, down on the counter. "I bought enough for 3, Mrs. H," he added, giving Jane one of his winning smiles. She tutted under her breath. Nancy hid a grin. Her grandmother always acted like Jonathan was a bad influence. "So, what's the news?" he asked casually. Nancy looked up and narrowed her eyes as Jonathan pulled out an egg and cress sandwich for Jane, a cheese and tomato for Nancy, and a ham and pickle for himself, 3 bags of crisps, 3 bottles of orange juice, and 3 chocolate muffins. "What's all this in aid of?" she asked. He avoided her eyes. "What are you saying? That I can't bring my oldest and dearest friend her lunch without an ulterior motive?" "That's exactly what I'm saying." Finally, he looked up and smiled sheepishly at her. Jonathan was shorter than Nancy, even though he was 2 years older, at 28, something that she had often teased him about while they were growing up. He had messy dark hair and dark eyes, and always wore the same scruffy jeans paired with an array of cosy jumpers. Jonathan, in turn, had started her nickname of Nancy the Vampire at school thanks to her willowy figure, pale skin, and surname. Really, it was a wonder that they were friends at all. "Well, yes, I suppose I did want to talk to you." His eyes rested on the invitation in her hands again.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?